Okay, so you've already know how to implement the simple command or the ICommand interface into a simple command class. And we've already managed to call this simple method from the viewModel-based class through a command. So in order to demonstrate the use of the parameters that both the canExecute and the execute methods receive, I am going to create a new command. The first thing that I did was to change a little bit the person constructor to set the name and the last name to an empty string. When I'm not on design mode, when I'm on design mode, I still set the name and the last name to be something, in this case my name. Now back in the viewModel-base, I have created a second method, which is the parameter method, and it's going to receive a string. In this case, I called it person. It's just going to be the full name, and I'm going to write that person out, just like in the simple method. Nothing really complicated in here. Now, the first thing that I do need to do to start implementing the command, or the second command, which is going to take or use the parameter, is come to the commands folder and add a new class. So in this case, I called it parameter command. I will set it as public, and of course, I need to implement the ICommand interface as well. So I will solve the using for the correct namespace, and I will implement the interface. Now, before I start doing anything different, I will add a new property, which is going to be of type viewModel-base. And I also need the constructor. And in the constructor, I will also get a parameter, which is of type viewModel-based. And just like I did on the simple command, I will set the property viewModel to be the parameter received in the constructor. Okay, so let's start with the exciting part of the parameter command. Now, previously on the simple command, we didn't make use of the parameters that were received on both the execute and the canExecute methods. But in this case, I do want to receive a string. So I will actually evaluate the values of the parameter in the canExecute method to change whether or not the command can be executed. So the first evaluation that I want to make is to know if the parameter is not null. If it is not null, I will continue some evaluation, but if it were to be null, I want to return false. So if this parameter is null, I don't want to execute anything. But if it is not null, I need to make another evaluation. First, I need to get this string in the parameter, and I'm just going to do it like this. Okay, and the next thing that I want to do is evaluate if it's null or empty. So if that string were to be null or empty, I will also like to return false. That will mean that the string inside of the parameter is either an empty string or null. In either case, I want to return false. Now, if the parameter is not null and the string inside of the parameter is not empty, well, then I will return true, but only then. Like this, great. Lastly, in the execute method, I would like to call the viewModel, and the viewModel, remember that now has a parameter method, and I will send the parameter as a string. Like this. Great. So now, when the parameter method is executed, it receives a string, and that is written to the debugger. So, nothing quite new other than the evaluation of the parameter until now. But let's go to the main page, back to the main page, and below the button, which is for the simple command, I want to add a new button. and I'm going to set the content to be parameter command. Now, just like I did with the simple command, I would like to bind the command on the properties. I will go to command, create new data binding, and in here I want to go back to static resource, view model, and now the view model has the parameter command that I want to use. Now, okay, that's the exact same thing that we did before with the simple command. There's something else that I want to do, and that is to set the parameter for that command. So as you may be able to see below the command property of the button, we have a command parameter. We can actually set that parameter to be binding to something. So in this case, I want to bind to the data context of the button. Remember that the data context of the button is the exact same of the main container, which is the grid. And that grid, let me just show you, has a data context of a person right here. So as you can see, the static resource is pointing to a person class. So since I haven't specified otherwise, this button has the exact same data context as its parent, which is in this case the stack panel. And because I didn't specify otherwise, the stack panel has the exact same data context as its parent, the grid. So this person will extend to the stack panel and to this button. So that's why when I wanted to create a binding for the parameter command, I can actually set the full name of the data context of that button to be the parameter. So when I set it, as you may be able to see, all it happened is that I'm binding to full name. I'm not setting a source because it's implicit that the source is the data context. And of course, in this case, the full name is the path. Just like we did with the simple command in here, the path is also the implicit property to be set. Now, as you can see right now, the parameter command appears to be washed out, is not able to be pressed. It's just not active. And that is because right now the full name, as you can see, is nothing. And the compiler is so smart that it is able to evaluate that on the sign time. So if we actually run this, you can see that at the beginning, the parameter command button is actually not able to be pressed. But as soon as I change this, for example, I add something to the name, now, as you can see, the parameter has now something inside of it, and now I should be able, or this can execute method should return true, and that is correct. As you can see, I can now execute the parameter command. So if I go ahead and click the button, the parameter method is executed with the parameter right in there. Great, so let's sum up. What did we do? Well, the first thing that we did was to create a new method inside of the view model base, which is going to execute something that receives also a parameter. We also created a new command, a new class, which implements the ICommand interface. Now in here, we again have a view model base property. We have the constructor receiving a parameter of type view model base, and we set that value to the property. And we did some evaluation on the canExecute method. So if the parameter was null, we were going to return false. If it wasn't null, we were going to get the string inside of that parameter. And after trimming every space that could be inside of it, we were going to evaluate if the string was null or empty. If it was null or empty, we were going to return false again. But if it was not null or empty, we will finally return true. So the command will actually be able to be executed. On the execute method, we were actually sending to the parameter method of the viewModel-based class this parameter as the parameter of the method. Finally, on the main page, we set the command to be the parameter command property of the viewModel, and we also set the command parameter of the button to be the full name of the data context of this button. And remember that the data context of that button is the same one as the grid, which in this case is a person. That's why we can actually access the full name property of a person as the parameter of the button.
So, without further ado, I have to encourage you again to go and check my Windows Universal App Development course. Now we will be covering everything about MVVM here on YouTube in the coming videos. But if you want to learn just a lot more about other stuff regarding Windows Universal App Development, go ahead and check this course. Like I said, during the course, we talk about a lot of things, not only MVVM. In the course, you would actually find the foundations of using XAML with C#. You can also learn a little bit more about object-oriented programming. We will actually be integrating Visual Studio Online as a version control of your Windows applications. We will be covering adding more pages to an application. We are going to be covering text to speech and speech to text, so you can talk directly to your application, or so your application can talk to you back. We're going to take pictures with your application. We're going to use persistence with application settings and SQLite databases, notifications through the live tiles, HTTP integration, this MVVM course, Azure, sharing code between platforms, a lot of things. So why don't you go ahead and give it a look, and if you like it, you like how it looks, go ahead and purchase it for only $29, just for you who's watching this video. $29 instead of $129, which is the original price. Now you have the link right there, or you will have the link in the description below. Just make sure to check it out and start getting ready for Windows 10.